As the 60-day legislative session nears its halfway point, I catch up with Journal Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd to discuss some of the biggest stories that started this week. U.S. Attorney for New Mexico Alex Ubalez has resigned at the request of President Donald Trump amid the DWI Enterprise case investigation. And City Council and the Mayor's office aren't on the same page about how they want to communicate moving forward. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Tuesday, February 18th, 2025, and I'll have more on those stories, plus a look at the Journal's other headlines and Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
As the 60-day legislative session nears its halfway point, Monday was another busy day up at the Roundhouse, which featured a visit from some of New Mexico's Congressional Delegation members, a protest, and even Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham appointing her brother to be a student regent at a New Mexico university. With the latest on all these developments, we now turn to Albuquerque Journal Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd, who's been covering the session alongside the Journal's co-business editor, Megan Gleason. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
And Dan, let's start with the visit by some of New Mexico's Congressional Delegation members to the Roundhouse. You had Senator Martin Heinrich, Senator Ben Ray Lujan, and Representative Teresa Ledger Fernandez speaking to lawmakers on Monday. What were they telling them?
Yeah, so this is typical in a 60-day session that members of the state's Congressional Delegation come and speak to legislators. And we already did have the other two remaining members, Melanie Stansbury and Gabe Vasquez, already came to the Roundhouse and spoke last month. But yeah, the visits today, I mean, were timely given some of the recent events we've seen in Washington, D.C. and some of the concern that's been raised about some of these actions by the Trump administration, kind of with layoffs, funding freezes, things like that. So it was interesting to see how the members of the delegation, they all kind of brought that up during their remarks to the legislature. Some of them were a little more direct or, I would say than others, but kind of, and how that was received as well by legislators.
And Dan, as the congressional delegation was speaking to lawmakers inside the Roundhouse, outside of it, there was a protest going on as well, correct?
Yeah, so there's a big President's Day protest going on outside the Roundhouse, about 1,000 people, and that was kind of not directly related to the members of the delegation's comments, but coincidentally happened on the same day. And we did the media got a chance then to speak with them after their remarks, and Senator Martin Heinrich really said that they're having a hard time finding out exactly how many jobs in New Mexico this is affecting and exactly which programs, but that they're pressing for those answers, but that it's just been a really fluid situation, and things are happening pretty quickly.
But the one bright spot here, Dan, despite all the uncertainty around the federal funding and what it's affecting, is that the congressional delegation shared that funds for the Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire victims, the $5.5 billion, is unaffected, but they did say that they would like to see FEMA speed up the process of reimbursing those victims.
Yeah, Senator Ben Ray Lujan brought that up and, really expressed a little frustration that we're almost 3 years out now from that fire, which is the largest in state history, and that FEMA still hasn't finished out paying, all the claims and people who lost houses or property to that fire. So expressed some frustration there, but they said, that they're really keeping a close eye on that funding, and that as of now, it appears to be secure, and that, but they also said, that FEMA really needs to act urgently to get that out. I think that is one concern, that some of this emergency funding could be affected by some of these orders, and at least so far, that doesn't appear to be the case.
But Dan, as is customary at the Roundhouse, especially during a legislative session, the congressional delegation's visit was not the only thing that caught our attention. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has appointed her brother, Greg Lujan, to be a student regent at New Mexico Highlands University, and that's caused quite a reaction at the Roundhouse. What are you hearing?
Yeah, this was an appointment that caught our attention. I mean, obviously it being the governor's brother, but also at a time when there's a lot of scrutiny in general of regents over the handling of the former Western New Mexico University president's contract, and that he kind of received a payout in return for stepping down. So, this appointment of Greg Lujan, I think a lot of senators are kind of, I would say, skeptical or a little cautious approaching approaching this. I mean, I think some of the ones that we spoke to said they don't have anything personal about him and that he seems like a good person, but just the appearances of it and, the fact that at this time when there's extra scrutiny of Regents, for the governor to be appointing her brother maybe kind of sets off some alarms a little bit.
And Dan, it should be interesting to watch as this story develops because his appointment is still subject to Senate approval, and you already have senators, including Senator James Townsend, who warned that the appointment could face opposition due to concerns about nepotism and transparency. But New Mexico Highlands University maintains that Greg Lujan was properly included in the student application process and that the governor's office selected him from a list provided by university officials.
Yeah, exactly right. And the governor did say in a statement that was provided to us, that she had encouraged him to apply for the position. And, she said he kind of embodies, what a student regent should be and, had been working hard and went back to school kind of later in life. That's why he kind of qualifies as a student regent, and that he used the state opportunity scholarship, to help pay for some of the tuition costs. So interesting, though, that she not only appointed him, but also encouraged him to apply for the position. And we don't know exactly how many people were on this list of nominees that she received, but, he was the one that was ultimately picked, which I think Highlands was probably aware of the fact that there was some relation there.
So Dan, a lot going on in the Roundhouse, so you and Megan should have no shortage of topics to discuss on this week's episode of Rounding Up the Roundhouse, which is the Journal's weekly podcast where Dan and Megan break down everything to do with this year's legislative session, and that can be found here on the Journal's podcast network. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
You bet. Thanks for having me on.
Alexander Ubalez, the U.S. Attorney for New Mexico, has been terminated by the Trump administration amid an ongoing investigation into a decades-long corruption scheme involving the dismissal of hundreds of DWI cases. Ubalez, who is a Biden appointee, was among the 20 U.S. attorneys asked to step down as part of a broader Justice Department shakeup. The move comes as Ubalez's office was in the midst of an investigation that exposed a scheme where Albuquerque police officers deliberately missed court dates and withheld evidence in exchange for bribes, including cash and gifts, from attorney Thomas Clear III. The corruption extended to officers in the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office and New Mexico State Police. So far, Clear and his investigator and 3 former APD officers have pleaded guilty to bribery and racketeering. Despite Ubalez's firing, he assured that the investigation would continue, urging those involved to come forward. And as Albuquerque Journal investigative reporter Colleen Hild explains, Ubalez's office went about this investigation in a very unique way.
As far as the DWI investigation, they have brought charges in a very unique way so that these cases are filed and they get guilty pleas at the same time. So that would be more difficult if anybody wanted to unilaterally dismiss them. I guess Trump could pardon the offenders, but this was a way to see the progress of the investigation as it was progressing, not waiting till the end of it.
His first assistant, Holland Craston, is now acting U.S. attorney, though it remains unclear who will be appointed next. The FBI praised Ubalez's contributions, emphasizing his role in improving public safety. Tensions are rising at Albuquerque City Hall over a procedural change in how Mayor Tim Keller's administration is handling City Council inquiries. City Council President Brooke Brisson has expressed frustration over the new system, which requires all council questions to be directed to a centralized email rather than contacting city departments directly. She described the current dynamic between the administration and the council as, quote, abrasive instead of cooperative. Brisson called on the administration to improve communication, warning that if the situation isn't resolved, she might block policy proposals from the mayor's office from being placed on the council agenda. She argued that the change is disrupting governance and preventing councilors from getting the information they need to make informed decisions.
In January, right after Brisson became the council president, the city CAO, Samantha Single, directed all the councilors, basically, if you have a question, whether it be a constituent concern, a policy concern, whatever it is, there's one centralized email to send all those requests.
Journal reporter Noah Kalabach covers city government for the paper.
And that was formed in response to a bill that passed last year from City Councilor Luis Sanchez, or an ordinance, I should say, that directed the Keller administration to answer all of the city councilors' questions in writing to know where the requests were at. So in response to that, the administration said, okay, here's one email line. We've got 9 people getting all those emails directly. They'll direct them to the correct city departments. They'll have the policy analysts look at it, whatever is necessary for that request, so that they can keep track of all those questions.
Singal defended the decision, stating that city staff were spending excessive time responding to individual council requests, sometimes at the expense of critical city work. She added that 9 people manage the inbox and direct inquiries to the appropriate departments, with hundreds of emails received since the system was launched. The centralized email system partly stems from an ordinance passed last year, sponsored by Councilor Luis Sanchez, requiring written responses to all city council inquiries. Sanchez, however, has criticized the execution of the system, arguing that what used to be resolved in a 2-minute phone call now takes weeks. Despite pushback from the council, Mayor Tim Keller strongly defended Singal, calling her a consummate professional who prioritizes serving the community. He emphasized that the system is designed to ensure efficiency and organization rather than obstruct communication. With the next city council meeting approaching, Bassan and other council members are seeking solutions to restore effective communication. She stressed that both the mayor and the council members should be working together to serve Albuquerque residents, but the current system is preventing them from doing their jobs effectively. If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. In other headlines from the newsroom, the trial of Nathan Garley and Jose Angel Romero, who are accused of opening fire on a family's truck in a mistaken gang retaliation attack, began Monday in Albuquerque. Prosecutors say Garley fired at least 14 shots from the sunroof of a Dodge Durango, killing 11-year-old Froylan Villegas and paralyzing his cousin Tatiana Villegas. Prosecutors allege that Garley and Romero were seeking revenge against a rival gang member after an encounter at an Isotopes baseball game, but mistakenly targeted the wrong white Dodge Ram. The attack left a mother and her 3-month-old baby unharmed, but devastated the Villegas family. Both men face first-degree murder and 13 other felony charges. A third suspect, Daniel Isaac Gomez, who was in the vehicle at the time, is expected to testify. Defense attorneys argue that the prosecution's case is built on unreliable witnesses with motives to shift blame. The trial is expected to continue through Friday. And state and local agencies have joined forces to combat drug use, trafficking, and violent crime along Route 66 and in Albuquerque's International District. Dubbed Operation Route 66, the initiative involves the 2nd Judicial District Attorney's Office, New Mexico State Police, Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office, and the New Mexico Corrections Department. District Attorney Sam Bregman emphasized a strict approach, vowing to prosecute offenders and enforce consequences, saying, quote, "If you smoke fentanyl, you will go to jail." Bregman also highlighted the operation's goal is to reclaim the area for residents and businesses. Officials plan to deploy, quote, "dozens of officers with reinforcements coming after the state's legislative session." The initiative follows a recent Albuquerque Police Department crackdown that resulted in 112 arrests alongside East Central. APD has since shifted its focus elsewhere, while Bregman's team takes charge in the International District. In addition to law enforcement efforts, Operation Route 66 will provide treatment options for those struggling with addiction. The State of the Heart Recovery Center will offer immediate assistance after the first 30 days. Until then, offenders will face jail time. Sheriff John Allen summed up the approach by saying, quote, "If you don't want to get help, you will go to jail." And Sandia National Laboratories achieved a record-breaking economic impact of $5.2 billion for 2024, surpassing the previous year's figure by more than $423 million. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast. Today you can expect some scattered sprinkles after 11 a.m., partly sunny with a high near 48. And for this evening, mostly clear skies are expected with a low around 23. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. I'm Gino Gutierrez. The Leading News will be back tomorrow.